Inadequate U.S. Patriot missile force size highlighted by Middle East crisis. Now they're saying that we just don't have enough of these things, but yet we have enough countries asking to use them, including we just covered that Jordan was asking. It says a significant portion of the U.S. Army's Patriot surface-to-air missile force have been or are in the process of being deployed to the Middle East in response to the ongoing Israel Strip crisis. This is in addition to many other obligations around the world, though this reflects the immense ability of the U.S. military to project power worldwide. It also underscores the stark limitations of its existing ground-based air-to-missile defense capability. It says concerns over what this means for the prospect of adequately defending U.S. forces deployed overseas, as well as the U.S. homeland, is something senior U.S. military leaders, as well as the war zone, have been drawing attention to for some time. So, I mean, it's just a simple fact. This stuff doesn't grow on trees. The Patriot missiles don't just pop out of the ground, and you can't put a seed and grow a new one. It's $1 billion a system or something like that. These things are extremely expensive, and the more that we give out, the less that we have at home. Now, nobody thinks about at home because we're geographically safe, even though 5.3 million people have been sneaking in, and that's just the ones they know about. Not to mention we have the potential event of, say, our grid going down, then you would have real chaos at home and possibly even a military force that could have already came in without anyone even knowing. Of course, we all know this. It's a taboo to talk about, but half of the people that you may be working with may not actually be here legit. So this is something that I think that people are going to be talking about very, very soon, as far as they are already talking about how we are at the bottom of our warehouse stores and that they're seeing the floor in some cases. As far as that was before this went down, that was with UKR and Russia and all of the stuff that we're sending other places. We are now, in my opinion, in World War III, and it's only going to get crazier from here on out. One question I have is there parties in place in our government that are actually turning a blind eye or even helping us actually go way too thin on our stocks? We'll talk about this and much, much more on tonight's show. Welcome to Marfoogle TV. It's a live show, and we're going to go over what has gone on in the last 24 to 48 hours. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, a.k.a. Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Tonight, we are going to be talking about everything that has happened in the last 24 hours. If your first time here, make sure to say hi to one of the mods. Again, the mods are down in the chat right now. They can answer any questions for you. There are a lot of really great people. Make sure to thank them by going over to marfooglenews.com/friends. Now, as far as all of the sources and different news that we're going to be talking about, there's always a source list and a full bibliography for every single show. All you have to do is look for today's thumbnail when you go to marfooglenews.com. When you go there, you will see today's thumb. Click on that, and you will be brought to a full bibliography of all of the sources used for today's broadcast. So make sure to go check it out. There's also the overflow. We'll go over that at the very end. let's go over and introduce my co-host slash internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Fugle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So, Dex, first of all, going to the first story here, they're looking at our Patriot missiles. This is like one of 20 different stories of all of these different things that they're possibly questioning it running out or being low on. Well, it seems like it's becoming a pattern.
It is. And further in this article, as you and I were discussing earlier, the numbers are laid out. And it's not just the Patriots, it's also the THAAD systems. So let me just run through these numbers real quick. Of the 17 battalions the Army has for the Patriot defense system, two of them are dedicated to training units. Four more are or at least four of them have been deployed in Germany, Japan, South Korea. Other units have been deployed elsewhere in the Middle East, such as in Saudi Arabia in the past. So sending a pair that we just did is a significantly huge portion of our availables, and probably leaving us with very little left. So imagine if we have a conflict in another location, or we need more. If we need more in the current locations that they're deployed, then we're going to be in trouble because we're going to run out. Or if we need them for our homeland, the THAAD system, that one, according to the missile defenses, they've got they're sending one to the Middle East. It's just one of seven that are active. Two more of those are already deployed outside of the continental U.S. in South Korea, and one in Guam. So that's not a lot left there on the THAADs either. So we're going to be running thin if we get into a multi-front, which is what we've always said. If we end up being engaged in three or more locations, we're going to be stretching pretty thin. And that's just with this thing, but it's not just this; it's everything. It's really hard for us to do this in multiple locations.
And mind you, I've quoted the different kinds of the studies they have done, and this is not only studies done by the Pentagon. It is studies and things done by China and their government and Russia's government. All three countries have openly admitted, and within about a year's period, you had all three have think tanks come out, and they did all of these war games, including these simulations done with some of the highest tech, most up to date, incredible computers. I don't know if you could say quantum computers, but I know that they're probably doing stuff in the back end that we don't know about yet. But simulations and running through all of these scenarios. And the only scenario that the US would lose to, say, China or Russia is in a two-front war. And you can only imagine if it's a world war where we're broken up over multiple fronts, and we're talking about several fronts. Now, again, they still, even in these think tank simulations and war games, we still win in some of those scenarios. But the only chance we have of losing with our superior forces, superior technology, superior everything, which again, it's not everything anymore. Mind you, we are no longer the largest Navy. We are behind in 37 out of 44 key, extremely advanced technology areas, which is scary, in supplies and different things that, as far as if the supply chain broke down, there are many things we are dependent on other countries for. But in these scenarios, they show if we are separated and spread out thin in multiple countries, that is where we could lose. And I say could lose. But at the same time, that's why you would think of all the alternatives that this community has thought about for years, scenarios like EMP and things like this. Say if our grid got knocked out, this would also add on top of, say, over the next couple months, we end up having a third conflict start somewhere else. Say North and South Korea start going, haywire. Say North Korea does a October 7th type of attack. And this is actually what they're prepping for. They said that, they're drilling and practicing for North Korea if they were to do the same kind of thing with artillery. So say that goes off. Then we are all of a sudden helping South Korea. We're sending stuff off there. Then you have Russia and China, and all of this stuff goes down all at the same time. China takes Taiwan. Then you have, of course, Cuba. All of a sudden, we're getting attacked from Cuba, and there are Russian forces in Cuba doing some sort of thing. You have all sorts of things that just all of a sudden pop off. Well, how does that work if we have now just helped out all of these other countries? We've sent all of our other stuff. Will we have enough? And then on top of that, you have a massive cyber attack or an EMP that knocks down our grid. Then you have chaos inside the United States. And just take a step further. Maybe there are already military members here, military age men, I don't know, say 18 to 25, that have come in mass over the last few years in through the southern border. They kick off things here. That is a scary thought, and we're thinking, oh, these are just all hypotheticals. But if you look at the current situation, it is really scary that it looks like that could be happening right now. And this shouldn't make people afraid. If you're new here, then maybe you are afraid. But many of us have been walking this through our mind for years, and we're not afraid of it. We're getting ready for it. We're looking at the things that could happen, and we're saying, hey, we should be prepared for this. This is very alarming. The shortages and the different things that are going on, who knows if they're really true? They could all be Ganda. But again, when you look back through history, that's one thing that a lot of us are good at. We may not be geniuses. We may not have 2 master's degrees or 5 master's degrees in stuff, but we can see common sense kind of patterns. And many people, you don't have to be an Albert Einstein, and heck, even Albert Einstein couldn't even tie his shoes, but you don't have to be an Albert Einstein to see the patterns of where this is going. You don't have to be Albert Einstein to see that history is repeating itself. I mean, in so many areas. We're actually going to talk about that here in a minute. But history is literally repeating itself again. There are stories tonight that you're going to go, what the heck? Sharon Davis, thank you for the super. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. Let's do a quick roll call before we get into the heavy stuff. B. Borrowed, thank you for being here. Let's see. Keto Mama, not hypothetical, but planned. Yeah, and you know what's crazy? There's so many. I guess as a creator, we hear all the negative comments. We hear all the people saying, oh, this is all fear, this and that. And it does make us want to make sure that everything we say is absolutely correct. And again, we work hard. People say things like, oh, you say things all the time that are wrong. I make sure I say every time, I try to respond to those people and say, if we've said something blatantly incorrect, I will correct it on the show. You can say it and you'll see it on the next show. But they always respond in crickets, not because we're perfect, but because we spend so much time before the show to make sure. And we still make mistakes. We make sure that we're not sharing something that's going to be proven incorrect. Or if we are sharing something that's even risky, we make sure to allow people to know, like, this may change tomorrow because they will probably put something crazy out like this, and then tomorrow they'll say it's debunked or something. But even then, most of the times we're very, very careful to not share blatantly false things. And not a lot of people do. They'll share every video that pops up on TikTok or Facebook, right? We don't. We make sure that we're being baseline and conservative on it, because the main point here is not to scare you and to freak you out every day about some potential thing. It is to look at the big picture and to get everybody and as many people as possible prepared for disasters. And disasters are coming. There's no way, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. We are going to experience disasters. We are in a crazy time. Our generation and just the many generations around my own, we're going to be alive for another world war. That's a crazy thought if you really think about it. Our generation, in 60 years from now, these kids are probably going to have peace for 50 years after this world war, whatever, if we're still around. But they're going to be in the same place we are right now, where we are so far from a world war that people don't realize what it looks like. They also don't realize that there's nobody that's absolutely safe from a world war. This is happening right now. The entire world's at war. And if they're not physically in a hot war yet, they're going to be. And statements like that, people push back on. They're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. One thing I don't get is if people do watch on a daily basis that totally disagree with this, I wonder, then why do they suffer through it? And I think it's because people in the back of their minds really do believe it, but their fear turns into anger, and their anger turns into delusion almost. Like they don't want it to be true, and they're telling themselves they hate it. It reminds me of my grandpa that listened to Rush Limbaugh every single show. He hated Rush Limbaugh. He called in more than anybody, but he listened to every single show because he would call in and argue with the guy. It's how it used to be, and I actually don't mind that. I think it's kind of a compliment. But right now, we are looking at some crazy, crazy scenarios playing out right in front of our eyes. We have, again, Melbourne, Australia here. Gaynor Blair, thank you. Truthrin. We have Texas in the house. Tennessee in the house. We have Ohio in the house. What is going on? New Mexico in the house. Linda P, nice to see you. Says, love this channel. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. At least you're not suffering through it. Let's see here. Rex says, I really like Dex summaries and comments. Thank you. Dex is great. Dingus Chubb, Midwest. We have Los Santos, Dank Bear, Minnesota, Minneapolis, Larissa Mondolamov. We have Kent, Texaco. We have Sean C. from Texas. We have Unknown Revolver. We have Pilgerton here. Michael X, Tampa. What is happening? We have Dale Jackson. It's Melbourne. And then Alberta. We've got Big Island, Hawaii. Rose, nice to see you. And Gomer, nice to see you. Patrick Brown from Montana. Wisconsin, VA in the house. Jeremias. And Kimbria from Cali. Thank you guys. I appreciate all of you for being here. Thank you. All right. And then we're going to fly through some of this because the crazier stuff is later. So U.S. troops in Iraq targeted by drones, marking 24th attack in past 2 weeks. Now, however you look at this, there have been attacks, and it seems like they have been kind of pushing this in our face a lot, because this means that these are kind of acts of war against our military, and they're already saying that this is why we are a part of things, that we are deploying, because our troops are getting attacked. Dex, I mean, we've already seen after 12 of these events that
headline's already outdated. It's now 25.
Yep.
So if you go on our website and go to the original article, you'll see it's now been updated to 25. So there was yet another one today, or more than one probably, that's taken this number that was just yesterday 24 to now 25. So it's happening over and over again. Even though our president ordered a strike to send a message to tell them to stop. I believe the strike was rather weak. It was not intended to hurt anyone. It went after 2 caches, one weapon stash and another was a weapons depot, and no injuries or fatalities were done there. It was basically a very soft hit by our strikes. But it was meant to send a message, as he said. Message not received, because they continue, and they're going to continue.
Yeah, and Julie Pilkerton says 27 per Fox News. It could be, and by the way, that number is just going to keep going up. However we look at this number, they're involving U.S. troops. So they can later use that to say this is why we justify us going in or us deploying even more troops. They already have multiple strike groups in the area. They have, as somebody said in chat, they have them surrounded. They have the Ticonderoga. They have the USS Gerald Ford. They have the Hall, the Baton Amphibious Ready Group. They have several groups that are already in place. Then they have the 900 troops, which I think it's a lot more than that. And then they have more troops on readiness. So they're getting them ready for this. Mind you, there's videos of all sorts of troops getting ready and at airports and leaving and getting shipped around. At the same time, you have Mike Minahan. He has been silent lately. He has already predicted a few months ago, told his employees through a memo that, hey, get ready for war with China by 2027. In the same month and a half period, he ended up making a decision that affected our military worldwide that was removing almost all of the identifiable numbers on our cargo ships, and all of the military cargo that's traveling around the world is now traveling around with no easily identifiable numbers. Why does that happen? Well, I think they knew a whole lot more before this October 7th event. And I know they were doing deployments. The fact that there were military members that knew they were going to Iraq, and these military members told them weeks before the surprise attacks, told their family to be ready to have a plan to get their stuff ready and to have extra food and water and all of this, and that we were going to war. They knew this before the 7th. And I know there's going to be whole documentaries about how they knew about this before. And I'm confident in this. I don't say stuff like that very often. I'm confident that they're going to go back and they're going to show that they knew all sorts of stuff before this. And like people say in chat, it's because, well, if there's a script, you gotta run along with it. But yeah, these events are going to turn into something greater very fast. Jewish homes have stars of David painted on them in Paris. You can see where this is going. If you don't think history is repeating itself, whether this is Ganda or it ends up being debunked tomorrow, which it sounds like it's not going to. This is they're saying that they're painting the Star of David on people's houses. Dex, this is like, when else did this happen?
I mean, come on. This is it's so much like what happened during a chilling reminder, as they call it, of the Holocaust. So yeah, this is very creepy at the very least, and extremely, extremely dangerous and offensive at the greatest end of it. Seeing this happen, and where this may lead to, and it's not just the one picture; it's multiple pictures. It's happening in lots of locations there in Paris. Now, remind you, we did talk about why we think Paris has so much more rioting and protesting, and they had to create laws saying you couldn't protest about this because of their immigration numbers are humongous compared to every other country. They're like 4 or 5 times the number of immigrants that had come in from nations that would tend to have people that are supportive of the other side of this conflict, or that specific side of the conflict. So that's that in and of itself, it makes it obvious why Paris or France in general is more of a hotly, I don't say contested, but a hot spot, so to speak, for a lot of protesting on both sides, for that matter.
And you could look at this another way. You could think maybe 3-letter agencies are involved, and maybe this is to fuel that comparison, right? Because they've been comparing what happened in on the 7th. They've been comparing it a ton to that event, to the Holo, and of course the cause, right? So they've been comparing these two things very closely, and now you're seeing these events. Either way, it's a setup mentally for us all to be ready for the same thing. If there's a play, and by the way, there's a lot of crazy, shady things that happened in WW2, and mind you, they didn't call it, World War II until the very end. There were a lot of events that happened back then. There were events in World War I that started it off, and they called Fantastic Freddy events. This is if there's a play or a playbook that works, you don't think they're going to use it again? You think about the level that they have these think tanks work everything out. Think about how just governments work in general. Think about the littlest thing. So what a politician wears when they go to speak to a different city. If they speak to Texas, they might have them wear some cowboy boots that are scuffed, but not too scuffed, to make sure that they portray that they're this, but they're also professional, but they're not so professional, but they're not, they're scuffed, but not scuffed enough to be, obvious. It's like their tie is red for this crowd or blue for this crowd. It portrays power. It does this. A watch, but not too fancy of a watch because you don't want to unrelate. Think about how they think about like just meetings like that and how they spin that kind of stuff up. Then think about how they spin events, how they have a whole department and a person that is dedicated to spinning events. The president speaks on something. They have a person for that, a literal person that will sit there and say, oh, no, he didn't say that. And just before earlier in that day, he had something on his mind, and that's why he said it, and this and that. They're just full of crap, okay? They spin everything. And as far as like the wag the dog kind of scenario, that kind of stuff happens all the time. But world governments across the planet, they go so deep into thinking about how to manipulate. Manipulation is one of the greatest and unbelievable tactics they use to control huge populations. And really, at that level, to get to that level, You really have to just bend over and let anything happen that's going to happen. You will not just end up in that position if you're a normal person. In fact, you could say that T-Man was the closest to a non-politician to becoming that person, to that position. But then again, T-Man, our former president, he was already a billionaire. He knew all the businesses. He had all sorts of ties with, maybe he had ties with the old oil tycoons or whatever. Either way, there were people in charge that made sure that he was, of course, going to be favored in some arenas, right? They all have connections. You're not going to see some random Joe Schmo that's a plumber in Ohio end up being the president tomorrow. That has never happened. In fact, you can prove that with how many of the former presidents of this country have been directly in a certain type of club, or have gone to a certain type of college, or have been in certain kind of groups. Even if they're not part of this club, then they're usually part of this one, or they're related to this person, or they're the direct descendant of that person. It's happened time and time again. Now you look at events like this. Look at the playbook is being played again and again and again. And they just have to wait 20, 30 years and they can use it again. We'll see in 2050 the same stuff happen. Only they'll be using a symbol that we don't even have in existence yet. This is crazy where this is headed. And then Blinken to visit Israel on Friday, make other stops in region. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will visit Israel on Friday for meetings with members of the government there and make other stops in the region, the State Department said on Tuesday, amid the Israel-Hamas conflict. Palestinian health officials said earlier that at least 50 Palestinians were perished when Israel airstrikes hit a refugee camp in northern Strip on Tuesday as Israeli ground forces battled Hamas gunmen based in a sprawling tunnel network. Secretary Blinken will travel to Israel on Friday, meetings with members of Israel's government, and then make other stops in the region. So whatever is happening there, Blinken is, of course, high up on the totem pole. Probably some changes and closed-door meetings are going to have to happen that day. And, of course, another meeting that is going to be happening, which, again, we'll be talking about in the coming weeks, is that you're going to have Biden actually meeting with Xi. So all of this stuff is going on. I think it's strange to me that not only Newsom meets with Xi Jinping, but then in the next month, we're going to have Biden also meeting with him when there's all this other pressing stuff in the Middle East and all the stuff with UKR and Russia, right? But yet look at the priorities that they're taking to meet with countries that they never meet with, that are completely on a completely other page. But Blinken is going to be there. We'll see what ends up happening with that. All right, and let's see here. By the way, thank you, Kelly2334. Thank you so much for your support on the last show. I appreciate that. Thank you, and thank you. April Sky, thank you for your support. And again, thank your mods for keeping it awesome down there. Lola Cafe, thank you so much for your support tonight's show. It says thank you to you and Dex. Well, thank you. And then Preppermint says prep and pray, forgive others and yourself. Love Jesus. Good night, and all you peculiar people. I love you all through Jesus Christ, our Savior. To him be the glory, honor, and praise. Preppermint, thank you, and thank you for the support, and God bless. Sharon Davis, thank you. I appreciate your super sticker. Thank you. And then Schaefer Girl, Antonio Neftali, and Zenwan AZ, Bunny Ha, and Bible Talk 777. Thank you guys for this week. Before we move on, make sure to go over and check out EMP Shield. This is our defense. Somebody asked, they said, hey, I'm EMP proofing, and do I need to do solar panels or just the generator? I believe we actually had this answered in one of the videos we did, but you would just do the generator. I don't believe you need to.
Both sides.
Both sides on the in and out, but you don't need to do the actual panels, right?
If the panels are not plugged in and they're in a closet or you're storing them, they're fine. They are not susceptible by themselves. But when they're wired, that wire is low voltage. You need a low voltage side EMP protection. And then on the high voltage side where the inverter is, you need one on that side. So both sides on the solar generator if it's all plugged in.
Now, there's a specific one for the Energy Flex 1500. It's the only solar generator you can get an EMP shield for right now. But just so you guys have a heads up, that unit is in extremely high demand, and that people are waiting for that one. Most of them you can get right away, like the micro, and then of course the original. This is a device that can be wired into your cars, your trucks, your motorcycles, your generators, your house, and it will ground the signal of an EMP or a CME, a Carrington level event from the sun, or multiple events before it's able to fry your device. And that way you can get home to get to your family to bug in, or to get out to bug out. EMPs will happen in pulses, and it will actually happen in multiple phases. So this is good for all of them. If you want to protect your stuff and keep it running, then you would want to put one of these on it. Again, then your device or your car will run, your boat will run, your RV, your motorcycle, whatever you want to protect, they have a device for it. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. Not only will you be protecting yourself and saving yourself in one of these events, but you'll also be helping our independent news. We only pick affiliates that we 100% believe in. We have had, I think, 4 or 5 affiliates this whole time in 4 or 5 years. That's because we are very, very picky about anything that we end up choosing to back. And we don't just, we're not selling $10 Chinese flashlights or something. We make sure that if we're going to back a product, that it not only works, that it is one of the best out there. This company is actually outfitting DHS and DOD right now, and they are on the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. So marfooglenews.com/EMP, and make sure to use the code MARF. All right. And then, Dex, do you want to go over the paramilitary group taking the border into their own hands?
So, folks, this is a very fascinating article. If you're interested in it, I would highly recommend you go take a look at it on the website. I'm going to give you the very, very brief highlights because there's something inside this article that is so much more important than that we need to think about. So this is a group, particularly it's like an expose on a gentleman who runs a group. They're retired military. They go out on the border. They patrol it. They go out locked and loaded. But they're doing observation, and when somebody crosses or they engage, they basically just follow and stay with them until CPD can get there, can get there, and then they hand it over. They don't actually detain. It's not their job. They don't have that role. But many of the stories in here are really fascinating. But one of the ones they talked about, and this is what's so important for us to think about, is that he did talk about one time they caught a Syrian national on camera. And they turned out to actually be on the watch list, and then fortunately was later arrested 6 weeks later in DC. So this is a prime example of what is happening, and this is happening at scale. This is just one instance that was documented by this gentleman and his group, and what they do, because they set up trail cameras, they run up and down the border in their spare time doing this as a group. That's one of the examples, and it's really fascinating to think about, as you mentioned very early in the show, about the type of age, military aged people that are coming across in mass from many different countries, from the Middle East, from China, from others, and many that are even potentially on watch lists, like this person was, who fortunately was picked up, but there are many that aren't, and we know that, and that's why we have to sort of pay attention to what's going on here, and understand that we may have bigger issues just hiding right behind the corner here in our own country.
Yeah, and we're geographically safe from, say, an invasion of 30 Navy boats. We're going to see those coming. But as far as people that are already here, we know this has been happening. It's been the most talked about issue, is all of these people from different countries coming in, and a huge chunk of them being from countries that we are currently in conflict with. And then President JB&G will meet in San Francisco in November. Now, I have pointed out, I thought it was extremely sus that that we had Gavin Newsom, the politician of California, have a surprise visit with Xi. Like, there was no lead up to it, and all of a sudden they were like, oh yeah, Gavin Newsom is going to meet with or met Xi Jinping. The reason why that's strange is because we have had tons of political leaders go over there and not meet directly with the president. But yet Gavin Newsom does, the same leader of the state that has had all sorts of weird issues and weird things happen over the last couple of years. Now, you could say you're wearing your tinfoil hat and you watch movies like Dragon Day and say, man, that sounds like a realistic kind of thing to happen. Or if you watch the movie Red Dawn and look at the current situation with China and you go, man, that's crazy. It kind of seems like something like that could happen right now. And then you hear about documented cases of all of these 18 to 25-year-old men coming into our country and right when they get across our border, cutting chickens and, drinking them. And that's kind of a ritual of the PLA. And then you say, oh, well, in those movies, that was too silly. They had political leaders that were already set up in our country, and they were basically going to turn a blind eye or to help the cause of something happening like that. And you see something like that, and then you go, oh, well, the same state, California, ended up having all of the gun owners of that state. One of the biggest defenses of the United States, that we all own weapons, right? That we're a huge defensive country. All of the gun owners in the entire state were doxxed. Somehow, a strange leak that is to this day is still very suspect. All of the gun owners, how many they owned, where they lived, where they stored the weapons, where they've publicly put that. And that information all got out. So this surprise meeting and then all of these meetings with Xi, everybody's looking over here. Meanwhile, there's countries that we absolutely know are not only stealing from us, they've verified that they're doing espionage on a level we've never seen before, and that they have the capabilities to do things that we have absolutely no mind to even wrap around, like bio events happening, which we're going to get into that here in a second, because China is now accusing us of something that we were talking about in 2018 of China doing, which is gene-specific warfare, right? If you go down that road, it sounds sci-fi, but this is something that is now going to be talked about, and you heard it here 5 years ago. Dex, what do you think about them meeting? Like, what do you think they're going to talk about?
I don't know if they're going to plan the baton pass to Gavin. Some have speculated that he's the actual runner for the next round of the presidency. We'll see. Although all signs still look like JB's going to hang there, but we don't know. Time will tell next year. That's possible. There's, the whole gamut of things. I just find it so interesting, though, that he's going to California. It's, nice to know that he's coming to our country and we're not going to his, because it seems like we've sent everyone to his country, and even people that he wouldn't meet with. And even people we didn't want to send, like Gilly Bates, shows up and gets a private dinner meeting with him, but has nothing of substance to talk about that we know about, other than what we all think is actually happening behind the scenes, which is some nefarious stuff. So yeah, nothing. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to talk about. It's kind of crazy. We're at this point where we're almost even at a conflict with them down in the South China Sea with the Philippines. So there's going to be a lot of topics for sure.
And not to forget, like you said, Gilly Bates is one of the only other people that have caught Xi Jinping's direct attention, hosted him and his wife for dinner, and very, very close. Of course, he is involved with all sorts of things directly tied to the three-letter agency that was running the world there during CV, that same agency that even Australia accused of basically being on the payroll of the country that everybody's meeting with. But during that same time, Mr. Gilly Bates' company, Microsoft, one of the biggest companies out there, they are the ones who keep coming out and saying that Xi's country is somehow getting in and back doors and all of these things happening. And I'm like, how are all of these directly tied, but yet nobody is connecting the dots? It's not like it's a huge stretch and these dots are so far away. It seems like it's obvious. It's almost so obvious that it's like, why are people not asking these questions? It's nuts to me. And then now they say China's spy agency claims Gene weapons that target specific types of people are being developed by certain countries in eerie warning. Now, I don't know if they're looking in a mirror here, but what they are pointing to is us. Now, I guarantee we're doing this because back in 2018, I covered stories of this happening before CV. They caught them in 2018 and in 2019. They knew that they were doing this kind of testing and this kind of guinea pig type stuff. These are the type of weapons where they could take out a certain type of people. I mean, it's really quite nuts. And there were questions when CV was going on that certain type of people were affected more and less and all of this. And you could go down that rabbit hole all you want. But at the same time, we haven't seen what they're talking about here. You're talking about, say, what if you made a weapon? Say if you really wanted to dominate the world. What if you made a weapon that you could literally pick which people you want to survive? What if you could pick something that where not only could you pick who survives take an analogy if you have a nuclear bomb, but the nuclear bomb only hits certain people and other people are miraculously totally safe. That's what we're talking about here. Only nothing else gets destroyed, just the humans they don't like. That's what's so terrifying about this. And if you look at the DHS releases that we have shown you, all of these DHS releases for devices and different detectors are trying to detect this exact thing. So you really don't have to go far to connect the dots on this, but they are now accusing us of doing it. It says that they claim that have armed themselves with AI-created genetic weapons that target specific types of people. Huh. Wow. The pot calling the kettle. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, it was just the irony that they're the ones saying this when just 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, October 21st, 22nd, 2 years ago, the National Counterintelligence and Security Center in the United States government was warning everyone about China's collecting of genetic data from around the world. Okay, they were collecting it. They were getting DNA. And getting it from the companies, getting it from all sorts of other sources. And then there's a whole lot of speculation about what went on during the event, that's CV event, as to whether or not other sources of that data went to companies like those random companies that showed up in California that had no licensing and processed lots of stuff and then disappeared. Like, what were they doing? So yeah, it's really rich to hear them turn around and say, we're doing this, or other people, but we know who they're talking about, are doing this when they've been the one. And let's not forget the delivery mechanism. They even talked, when it was talked about what was happening in their advanced labs, they were talking about delivery systems where they could literally use what you would think of as a bang bang, but it's really shooting a microscopic thing at a person, and it would inject through them. They would never feel it, never see it. It would just happen. And then that would go in, and they could code any type of genetic thing to happen to that person. If they wanted them to cluck like a chicken and never do anything else but that, they could program that into it. They could make them paralyzed from the waist down. Not only that, they can create the key that undoes it. So it's sort of like putting a password on a human. They can infect someone and say, you now have this inability, or you have this disability, or you have this genetic thing happen to you immediately. And the only way to reverse it is if I give you the code, and it's a secret code to that process that they developed. And it's not like, you just go to Big Pharma and take a pill. It has to be sequenced in.
It's like, art imitating life again. The show Utopia, the newer one, went over how the girl had Dahl's disease, I think they call it. I think it was Dahl's disease or Dahl's disease in Utopia. How they portrayed it in that show is exactly what they're talking about. Like, they create something that could only affect certain people, right? They could stop people in their tracks. Imagine an army marching towards you. They could hit with something they can't even see. It goes into their skin layer, and then all of a sudden, boom, all of a sudden they're stopped. They can't walk. They stop and just fall right over. Or they are able to grab all of them, load them up into a truck, and then one by one they could go, here's the key, you're going to do what we want, or this is your life. They could control them. Think about this. You could get very important people, do this without them even knowing, and then have them, take them in a van, put something over their head, say, hey, this is your life now. You're going to be paralyzed. You're going to be a vegetable. We have the key and we can turn it off again at any point. You're going to do this for us. Not to mention neurostrike capabilities. This is something that is something we can't even wrap our heads around. Sci-fi. Neurostrike technology can control someone's brain. Not only someone, whole populations. This is where we're at right now. So when I said that the next world war would be bonkers, I wasn't kidding. They even believe that they may be able to do it with apps, such as something like TikTok, right? That they could control massive amounts of populations with something as simple as an app or a device. This is what's happening right now. And people that don't really know much about it are like, yeah, well, that sounds crazy. People that have looked into it are terrified, because the more you look into it, the more you realize that this is absolute fact. It is no longer theoretical. It is happening. We think of it as mind control. Ooh, ever since they've made films, it has been done as a Twilight Zone type of thing. Now it's no longer Twilight Zone, and it is happening. Not to mention all the weird connections between the people and the companies that are involved with all of this. They all are friends. It's quite disturbing. And then the Air Force deploys 3 S-400 missile units on China PAC border, process to start delivery of the other 2 units to begin soon. The Indian Air Force has deployed its 3 S-400 air defense missile squadrons along borders with China and Pakistan to further boost India's defense system. Indian and Russian officials are soon to meet to finalize delivery schedule for the remaining 2 squadrons. So, Dex, this is really confusing. You know my opinion about India and China, and I think something's going on there. But then stuff like this happens. Like, what is going on here? And why do they even need this? Where's the...
Well, absolutely. So they, for as much as you, on one hand, think that they are working together, there are times that they are in conflict with one another. There are times in which they're literally throwing each other off of the cliffs in conflict in certain areas. And in this case, they've invested heavily in S-400s from Russia, China's ally, to defend itself against its ally, which kind of doesn't make sense either. Part of me is like, what are you thinking? You're wasting your money, because if China wanted to do something to you, they just call Russia and say, give us the keys or disable those, or how do we crack into them? That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what they're doing. That's what's been reported. And now the main thing is the whole point of this is they're trying to get the rest of their remaining 2 squadrons in. And of course, Russia's not necessarily in a great position at the moment to be selling off systems like this, or building and manufacturing these. If they're building and manufacturing, they're probably putting them on their own front lines for everything that's going on in Europe, especially in UKR area. So there's probably some more delays coming, but it's very fascinating when you think about what India is actually doing.
Yeah, and why everybody is setting up too. I think we're going to see correlations too with other countries that we're not talking about, setting up military setups. Maybe they know something we don't. I don't know. Something's going on here. Before we move on, make sure to go over and check out Inergy. As I mentioned before, this is actually one of the only solar generators you can get an EMP Shield for. They directly have teamed up with Inergy. Inergy itself is a company that is now going to be delivering the Flex Tactical, their new version of the Flex 1500. This is actually going to be an Army Tough version to the U.S. Army. This was actually designed with the Air Force Research Laboratory, and it is available for civilian use as well. So this one is really, really awesome. My recommendation, though, majority of people do not need built-in heaters to every batteries, and definitely could save the few dollars to forego that. The Flex 1500, on the other hand, these are modular systems. So just like Lego bricks can be stacked, they can be altered, they can be expanded, and they can add mods that can change the overall performance. So when you look and you end up going into a purchase like this, they're not cheap. This is a power replacement system. I mean, essentially, when your power goes out, you have a generator. And they're solar, so you can actually get power from the sun, unlimited power, as long as you have some panels. So when you look at this, you'll see the comparisons between it and other brands. I think that it's not fair because since it's a modular system and they have constant mods coming out, any kind of X that it doesn't check, they have a mod for it, and you can add that. So you can make it as basic as you want, or you can make it as complex and awesome as you want. That's what's really great about this, and the fact that it is so simple to use. It's plug and play. You plug the solar panels, one cord into it, or if you have 4 panels or 12 panels, you daisy chain them like Christmas lights. So it's super, super easy. Go to marfugglenews.com/energy, INERGY, and you can have as much battery life as you want or as little. If you want fast charging, you can add it and we're talking about super incredible fast charging. Or if you want to put in 12 panels instead of 4, you can do that. Again, like one of the things they look at is, this main unit, their competitor, they can do 12 panel or 8 panels or something. This does 4. And you're like, oh, well, that does 8. This does 4. You can add a mod that allows it to do 12. So I think any weakness they have now made a mod, which makes it the best. So that's my opinion on this. I, again, have the Flex 1500, and I have one of their first tacticals. They sent me the version that they were testing. Mine was like the one before they even had it all put together, and it is absolutely unbelievable. Both are awesome units, and again, they are incredible. So go to marfugglenews.com/energy, INERGY. Make sure to look at the UPS mod. That turns it into an uninterrupted power supply. So when the power goes off, it will automatically switch over. Not to mention they're silent, so nobody's going to hear that you have power, which in an SHTF situation, you do not want people knowing you have power. And you don't have to buy gas. You don't have to deal with gas stations in a disaster. You're set. Or you can charge it from the wall. marfugglenews.com/energy, INERGY, and it helps us. Again, thank you again for going through us. Ukraine official says it can't properly use its Western kit because it has so few soldiers left. That's not good. I saw a comment on Twitter today. Somebody said that essentially they are not doing very good and said that he should be going to a certain court because he's basically taking out the entire population of his own country. Now, no matter what you believe here, if reports like this are true, that's not a good thing for Ukraine. And that's not exactly what the mainstream media was telling us for a long time. They were saying that their will and might was going to win this thing. Now they're saying they barely have enough people left to run their gear. Dex, do you want to chime in?
Sounds like a Ganda-ish piece to bring in some outside help. That just they've asked for it for a long time. They've always wanted NATO to join. It won't surprise me if they don't say, "Hey, we need some sort of help now because we can't even use the gear that you've given us because we don't have enough people. So give us some people." That will be interesting. Now, I guess one way around that could be to use contractors, the money could be spent for contractors to go in, and that would probably still cross red lines with Russia, but it might sort of allow them that gray area of saying NATO's not involved. But I don't know. This just smells super fishy to me.
Heck, maybe they can call up the Wagner Group. Or I don't. What did they still call themselves that, or they just call themselves drunk on Saturdays or something? I don't know. And then we have Zelensky aid on corruption, and people are stealing like there's no tomorrow. I commented on this earlier that maybe because there isn't a tomorrow. I so so many people are so sensitive about this, and I've seen people that doesn't matter what kind of negative press comes out on this country, they are just 100%. Even Mr. Gates said that this country historically has been one of the most corrupt countries in the world. The 9 people directly under Zelensky, this was just a few months ago, resigned because they were being investigated for corruption. Many of them had $1 million homes and supercars pulled up in the driveways of these $1 million homes. And we're talking about millions of dollars, like compounds, right? You had the recruiters in that country, the recruiter statements that were recruiting people, they were given massive amounts of this budget money to recruit new people. Well, supposedly, now they consider it a fact. There were some of these recruiters that had to leave or were fired or were charged because they were taking massive amounts of that money and they were funneling it to themselves. Now they're saying that they are spending the money like there's no tomorrow. Where is a lot of this money coming from? Well, they did one stat that this was early before many of the payments out, that basically at that point, each American will end up paying about $11,000 each in taxes towards this, that it will end up, around that in a lifetime going towards this. Now I'm sure it's way more than that. But they're saying that they are, of course, super, super corrupt. You don't have to believe this. Again, this is Business Insider, so it totally could be Ganda, but the actual information is coming from Time Magazine, which is absolutely nuts. Dex, it's almost like they're just like going to fade out of UKR and everybody's just going to forget it happened.
Yeah, this is a reporter, Schuster. I remember his name, Simon Schuster from Time, and he actually spent time over there with Zelensky and others, and he was interviewing everybody. And of course, on the beginning of the article, he talks about the standard MO. The standard MO is like, hey, oh yeah, they're telling us we can't take vacations, we can't go anywhere, we have to just sit in our office, don't spend money, don't go shopping, do anything that makes it look like we're corrupt because we're trying to paint this image that we're not. But then he went on to say that, amid all the this is a quote, amid all the pressure to root out corruption, I assume perhaps naively that officials in UKR would think twice before taking a bribe or pocketing state funds. But when I made this point to a top presidential advisor in early October, he asked me to turn off the audio recorder so he could speak more freely, Schuster wrote. He said, Simon, you're mistaken. People are stealing like there's no tomorrow. The same official claimed that the defense minister's firing did not have the desired effect because it took so long to occur. So, and it goes on. Another advisor similarly noted by the time of the crackdown, it was way too late. And the Time correspondent observed that even UKR soldiers at the front lines are making a joke. They call it the Reznikov's eggs. It's a metaphor for corruption. So this whole notion, this painting a picture of them being super corrupt, whether it's true or not, and there's probably some truth in there. I'm of the camp it probably is true, my opinion. Allowed to have it, but they can't dig out of that hole. That's what's caused such a problem with the finances and the financial support from everybody going over there.
I mean, we're talking about massive money, and then they say, oh, but the 9 people directly under him were super corrupt. All these other people were corrupt, but he himself, you had, I think it was Blinken, this Halloween, who just dressed his kid up as Zelensky. And, yep, no joke, put the green little shirt on him and paraded him through some sort of White House event. Hey, because, you used to dress up like, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be this. His kid apparently wanted to dress up as that, or it was just a PR stunt or something. But everybody who supports, they must think, oh, those guys were bad. Yeah, of course there's bad. There's bad apples in all of it. But golden heart. I mean, they must have liked him on the show because he is an actor and he played an actor who went from a nobody to the president. Wait, is that real life or is that? Oh, it's both. It was in the show and it was on television. I wonder how they thought, oh, this guy might be a good president. Oh, wait, he literally showed himself acting like a president. Not to mention all of the other clips of him surfaced out there. I remember my friend saying why JB was a better president than T-Man, and it was because he was more professional and he thought of the president as somebody that kids could look up to and be professional and appropriate. And T-Man just wasn't that. Well, if you look at the background on this guy wearing, S&M stuff with, thongs and high heels and all sorts of stuff, then yeah, I don't think he would check that box either. I mean, this fact is stranger than fiction, is it not? The guy literally played on TV. I mean, how can people even get past that? Not to mention the clip in 2014 of some of our officials basically leaked out saying that we essentially helped pick who was going to be in charge, which, fast forward, we know who that person is. Like, there's stuff all over the place. And the less you know, well, I guess ignorance is bliss, right? But then when you look at it you're like, oh my gosh, this is a huge laundromat, and it's one of the biggest SCAMs in all of world's history. But I don't know. I think they're competing. CV and all of these others, and the farm and the military industrial complex, they're all competing for the biggest scam. 3 charged with sending Russia over $7 million in electronics to aid a conflict on UKR. Dex, do you want to cover that real quick?
Certainly. So these guys had they were dual nationals, or some of them were from both Russia, Tajikistan, and were living here in the US. They were using shell companies to buy dual use electronics. So that would be an electronic that may have had one purpose, but the components inside it could be used for a different purpose. They were using these shell companies to buy this stuff, funnel it through, and get it back to the hands of Russia. And they've detained them. They've asked the judge not to give them any bail. They want them detained indefinitely for the portion to get them to trial, as well as they've also said that the evidence shows that they knew what they were doing, that was for military purposes. A lot of this stuff goes into different types of components in tracking systems, in coordinate and guidance systems for missiles and helicopters and all sorts of other things. There's a lot of components that they were funneling through. So they're saying they basically shut down a big leak of getting tech into Russia that are circumventing these sanctions.
Yeah, all sorts of shadiness going on. Stormblade X69 says, can the tactical use the same bats and bricks as Flex? Yes, and there's some stuff that's not even out yet that they're talking about, which can adapt. But yes, they technically can, but they have different adapters. Like the tactical has a latch system, and the Flex has like these hooks that hook in. But they are actually building something, which again, which is really cool, that will be able to adapt all of them. So you could switch and mix and match. So that's really cool. The tacticals have built-in batteries for extreme cold temperatures. So very, very cool. But yeah, eventually you will be able to mix and match whatever you want, and even design different, areas and how you want them structured, which is very cool. So they do have the basic female and male that connect like Legos. So you can right off the bat, without anything, you can connect them, but they won't be locked. You can lock all the tacticals, you can lock all the flexes. But then they're making an adapter. I think they're also making like a thing that can adapt them. Very, very cool system. But most people don't need those built-in heaters. What you would want the tactical for is the steel frame, because it could drop off a freaking truck. That's how crazy these are. And then the 1,500-pound latches are super fast. It's like click, click, boom. And you know that you're not going to accidentally switch them over and drop it. So yeah, very, very cool. One of the coolest things I have ever used. All right. Samuel Turner, I have for some years only feared a grid down event due to our wide open borders and no screening of people who come here to, quote, visit. We are in the mess due to lousy performance by the three branches of our gov. Samuel Turner, I don't disagree. Spot on. Yeah, I think there would only be expansion onto that. Very rarely do I see a comment where I can 100% go, I agree. That one, I agree. Thank you to you and Dex. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for all of the new subscribers. I appreciate that. Preppermint, thank you for being with us or being a member for 2 months. Thank you. Says, well, tickle my toes, Adam Dex Mods. Thanks all good night and good God. Thank you. Two-Tone, Shadow Star, Jen Ben, Celia May, thank you for subscribing. Let's see here. Kelly Benson, thank you for just subscribing. Cameron Harmon. Fire of Pain, thank you for subscribing. Yeah, if you do subscribe during the show, always try to shout you out. Thank you so much. And I appreciate each and every person that has joined us. So thank you. And then the U.S. SEC sues SolarWinds top cyber executives for fraud. The plot thickens. And mind you, SolarWinds accessed all sorts of just incredibly important areas. And if we are to expect an event like this, gosh, imagine if all of this stuff was happened and it was all part of a plan. And say the grid did go down because of some event that happened a few years ago and inserted backdoors into everything and some sort of Dragon Day Red Dawn scenario. Gosh, that would be scary. Dex, do you want to explain what happened and why the U.S. SEC is now suing SolarWinds?
They're basically accusing SolarWinds and its chief information security officer, Timothy Brown, with repeatedly violating U.S. security laws by failing to disclose the vulnerabilities in the cyber events in their regulatory filings and other company statements. So as a public company, they should have been telling things that are significant, that would, if you have something that will significantly impact the value of your company and you're a publicly traded company, you need to disclose that. If you knew you had a hole or a breach, that's something you should disclose so that the rest of the investors know and all have the same information to decide how much they want to invest or buy or sell or trade your stock at that time. That's part of disclosure. That's part of having transparency in a public company. So that's what they're suing them for, specifically because they say they knew this stuff. They had, were dealing with it internally. They didn't want to talk about it externally. So all of the stockholders had no clue. And of course, they all probably took a beating too for that when it came out and their value went down. But that's the basis for the lawsuit. Probably a lot of other reasons you could say they should be sued, slapped, smacked around, done by with for the failings that this major hack caused across so many companies and so many organizations, from DoD, every department of our defense, every line of our military, all of them got hit with this. This was huge.
Yeah, this is, and if you're not familiar with the SolarWinds hack and everything that went down, this is why many of us have been preparing for a potential event. As far as with the SolarWinds, they hacked very specific areas of our government. They hacked all 5 military branches. So, and one of the things though, if they're not declaring the wide open holes they're there, well then how are people going to know what's there to be fixed, right? But as far as they hacked into even the Space Force, they hacked into some of the top 500 companies. The companies that they hacked into, almost every one of those on the list are all of the same ones that you have a loyalty number with, and that they have all of the data of what you bought and returned and everything else, your home address, all of your number, all of your bank cards, all of that kind of stuff that's probably stored with them. Those were the places that were hacked. On top of that, that's like the small stuff compared, which by the way, over the last 2 years since this happened, all of a sudden everybody's getting notices like your email, your stuff is part of a list of hacked this and hacked that. Everybody I know at least once in the last 2 years has gotten some sort of notice that they need to change stuff because things have been exposed, right? Well, they hacked into Black Start, and this is an important part that I've never forgotten, and I make sure to remind especially the new people here. The SolarWinds hack, whoever was doing it, this shadow group, went in and accessed the Black Start program. If you look at the Black Start program and what it is, in fact, I'll just show you real quick. It is, let's see here. Let's see here. Black Start plan. Black Start is the process of restoring an electrical power station or part of an electric grid to operation without relying on external electric power transmission network to recover from a total or partial shutdown. Power restart to generating station may come from an on-site standby generator. The Black Start grid, the plan, this whole thing, that is our exact plan. If our grid goes down, what we would do step by step, and it took years to make this whole plan. If everything went down in this fashion, if everything went down in that fashion, and basically, if they know exactly how we are going to turn everything back on, they can then put a barrier between every single step. So imagine knocking the power down and they already know that it's going to take 12 to 20 months to 24 months to turn back on. So we're already in a hellhole. But then imagine the process, the slow process of getting it all back on. They could then stop that as well. You would be crippling an entire country. Everything would be down, and it would stay down because they access the exact plans. They also access the confidential parts of this. There's a public plan, and then there's a confidential plan. There's a confidential plan that has the codes and everything that is needed to actually, play out this plan. All of it was accessed. So therefore, it has to, first of all, a lot of it has to be redone, but some of it can't be. Some of it's things that they just have to do because that's the only option. The transformers, the giant ones, they're not even made here. That's why, again, part of the huge weight and how if everything went down and was fried, it would take so long to redo. That's why a lot of us suspect when we started seeing Tesla hats in all of the power stations, that Tesla was contracted to make some sort of backup battery or something, or transformer type things with backup batteries that were electric, because they don't make anything, any of the regular transformers here. Mind you, there was reports of Tesla hats all over these different electrical places, and it's like, and huge bricks being put down. They think those are backup batteries to help with something if it goes down. Mind you, they are preparing in the military for some sort of GPS-less, powerless scenario. Each base has this separate group of trained soldiers that train with night vision goggles, all of this. And we tracked this years ago. They ordered night vision goggles. They even used eminent domain, I think it is, to grab the night vision tubes that are made for these night vision goggles. And they told commercial companies, they were like, nope, sorry, we need these. Like there was something right over the horizon. So I think that this is something that everybody needs to know. It's like 101 for prep. Like you need to know that this is going on. It's why we suggest all of the things related to the power grid, power, energy, EMP Shield, all of these things, because we've been following this so closely over the years. Very crazy stuff. Speaking of which, if you don't have backup food, go over to marfooglenews.com/prep. You can get 25-year shelf life food for any disaster. It doesn't have to be an SHTF or a power grid down. It could be a storm that hits your house and knocks you out for a week. This is just, in general, something that you should definitely look into getting. If not, again, you can can your own food. You can dehydrate your own food for relatively cheap as well. There's all sorts of different ways, but if you want to just get something done This is a really good and affordable way to get a bunch of food at bulk for very affordably. marfugglenews.com/prep. You'll get a huge discount and help our channel at the same time. Dex, let's go over the web only. We've got a lot of crazy stuff here.
We sure do. Head over to marfugglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or hit that show notes link down below in the description. We've got everything on this web page that we've just covered and then some. That's the yellow bar. It says overflow. It's where the rest of the story is. So lots going on in is with the Strip and the rest of the Middle East, for that matter. So we've got updates there. Some are just saying there's 81 now that are seriously injured that Egypt is actually going to allow them to enter. So they're going to bring them across the border so they can get some medical help. For the humanitarian purposes, I think a lot of people are want to hear that type of activity happening because we've seen so much of this complete lockdown where it's even difficult to get food in for people that are hungry or even non-citizens out, like Americans or other nationals from other countries out that are trying to leave and get out of harm's way. I know it's not an option for the people that live there. That's part of the big conflict. All of this it continues on. We've got updates across, some of the things that are happening in other parts of the world as it relates to this. We've also got updates on Erdogan's statement that he made. So one of the NATO leadership had made some comments, not in an official NATO capacity, but saying, hey, his remarks are a real concern. So that's out there. It's interesting in my hometown here in Georgia, what group they're using to say is going after one of these groups. So that's I guess the news they're pushing here. I have not seen it firsthand myself, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So it's there. All of that and much more. And then as we move on, we start talking about some other stuff that's not happening in the Middle East or as part of that thing. There's stuff going on with the financial systems and this whole notion of a retail apocalypse. This is if you're into the finance and into the wondering why like all the mom and pop stores are gone, or it can't even reopen, or you see empty retail space all around you, yet they continue to build more. This article explains it all, and it does a pretty good job. And I'll tell you who's at fault. It's the banks. The banks control the loan. The landlord who has the loan on the property can't lower his rent without the bank approving it. The bank won't let them lower the rent because it will devalue the property, which then devalues their asset. So they either want cash or they want the asset to stay high. They would rather them say, no, you can't rent it and it sit empty than have the banks have all of their assets lose value. It's a crazy business that's going on right now, and it's much more to it than that. So go take a look if you're interested in what's going on. I know this affects a lot of mom and pops, a lot of small businesses that want to, are looking at storefronts and like, why can't I rent this? Why do they charge so much for it? And nobody's there, and it's been empty for years because CV came in and knocked a lot of people out. All the political stuff is here. Very fascinating. Go take a look if you're interested in what's happening with T-Man and that saga, and even what's going on with the rest of the politicians. We've got that full coverage there, and much more. By the way, there's an interesting article. It talks about the potential of, or if there was some truth in Putin's perishing, which we had talked about, and we've also talked about the notion that they say there's doubles out there. Article is goes into it a little bit deeper. So if you're interested, go take a look. It's not bad. It's worth reading, and it definitely paints a picture that there's something going on there. So if you're interested in that, take a look. All of that, so much more. It's all there on the website. It's the rest of the story. You could probably do a whole another show on all of this information. So go take a look. It's worth your time. We put it together for you every night, and we hope you appreciate it. marfugglenews.com. Click on the thumbnail for the show, or hit that show notes link down below in the description.
Thank you very much, Dex. And make sure to drop an M in the chat for all of the awesome mods. Again, you can find them at marfugglenews.com/friends. Again, great time tonight. Thank you, Bobby Sue, Sin Koi, Merlin, Rip Curl. I saw you in here tonight. Thank you so much for making it tonight. Marvin, fun time, Jammer. Thank you guys. Thank you, Chance. I appreciate you. Wide Awake and Angry, nice to see you. Nice that you made it to a live. Texas Mama Bear, thank you for the mod M. Deplorable C Block. Danish Girl, thank you for dropping the M. Alan G, Texas member, thank you. Beth, Jonathan Floming, thank you. Everybody that's saying thank you to the mods. Samuel Turner, thank you for your support. Merlin, thank you as well. I appreciate you guys. And of course, Tennessee Mountain Girl, again, thank you for your support tonight. Looks like you are top supporter tonight. So thank you. And then Stormblade X69 Wags, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's see here. And let's see. Lola Cafe and Sharon Davis, thank you, and thank you. Antonio Naftali, appreciate your support this week. And Bunny Ha, Alonzo Breck, Try It, Eat It Food, AJ Over the Moon. Thank you guys. Again, see you guys tomorrow. Happy Halloween, and I hope you guys had a fun time with your families, and I hope everything went well. Have a good night. Thank you, Dex. Appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro. Tonight's going to be a little shorter because it is 3 a.m. in East Coast, and it is almost midnight here. Looks like we have sort of a tie here. Thank you so much for every supporter of the channel and everybody that shares out our stuff. Let's make a fresh one for a few people. Lola Cafe. Thank you. Lola. No.